Mom texted, "You're not coming to Thanksgiving. Your sister's husband says you'd kill the vibe." I said nothing. Thursday morning, he walked into my conference room and saw my name on the door. His face went white. "Hey, Reddit. My family uninvited me from Thanksgiving because my sister's new husband thought I'd ruin the mood. What he didn't know was that I was about to become his boss. Here's how it all went down. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was grinding through quarterly reports for our Boston division. I'm 33 male, the chief operating officer for Kingston Pharmaceuticals, one of the biggest drug distribution companies on the East Coast. My signature shows up on contracts worth hundreds of millions. My decisions affect supply chains across 17 states. It's the kind of job that sounds impressive at parties, but means most people have no idea what I actually do all day. Been with Kingston for 11 years now. Started as a junior analyst fresh out of business school, worked my way up through operations management, regional oversight, and finally got promoted to COO 3 years ago. Youngest person to hold the position in company history. My office is on the 14th floor with views that make visitors stop and stare. Corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows, the whole executive setup. Most days I'm in by 7, out by 8 or 9. Weekends I usually check in remotely, handle any fires that pop up, review reports that need my attention. It's the kind of schedule that would make normal people burn out in 6 months. I genuinely love it. Always have. While other kids were playing video games or hanging out at the mall, I was reading business journals and watching CNBC. My parents never really understood that drive. To them, work was something you did to pay bills, not something you built an identity around. Dad worked in middle management at an insurance company for 30 years. Same desk, same routine. Mom was a teacher's aide at the local elementary school. Solid, stable, respectable jobs that ended at 5 p.m. and didn't follow you home. Me? I was the weird kid who asked for a subscription to the Wall Street Journal for my 16th birthday, who spent summers doing unpaid internships instead of working at the pool or restaurant like normal teenagers, who actually enjoyed economics class and business strategy case studies. Mom's voice had that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over 3 decades. The sound she makes when delivering news she knows will sting, but has already decided is necessary. Like when she told me our childhood dog had to be put down, or when she explained why I couldn't go to space camp because we needed the money for my sister's dance lessons. That specific blend of apologetic and firm that meant the decision was already made and I just had to accept it. "Honey, about Thanksgiving this year," she started, and I could hear her moving to a quieter room away from Dad, and presumably my sister's new husband. Background noise faded, TV turning off, door closing, the deliberate privacy-seeking that meant this conversation was going to suck. I kept my eyes on the spreadsheet, watching the numbers blur slightly while I waited for the rest. Boston Division was underperforming by about 8%, and I had a call scheduled with their regional manager tomorrow morning to figure out why. That's what I should have been focusing on. Instead, I was about to get family drama dumped in my lap on a Tuesday night when I still had 4 hours of work ahead of me. Your sister's husband, Kyle, he's still getting comfortable with the family, and he mentioned that maybe, well, he thinks it might be better if you sat this one out this year. Sat this one out. Like I was a bench warmer on the family team. Like Thanksgiving was some kind of recreational activity where participation was optional and subject to group approval. He feels like your presence might create an uncomfortable atmosphere, Mom continued, her voice getting smaller with each word. Given your success and everything, Lily agrees it would be easier on everyone, especially the kids. They're so excited about their new stepdad, and we don't want anything to overshadow that special time for them. I said nothing for several seconds. Let the silence stretch between us like a chasm opening up in real time. On my screen, the Boston numbers still showed that 8% shortfall. Somehow that seemed more manageable than whatever this conversation was becoming. You understand, don't you? Her voice carried that pleading tone now, begging me to make this easy for her. It's just one holiday. Maybe Christmas will be different. Kyle just needs time to adjust to having you around, and we thought it would be better to give everyone some space this year. Time to adjust to having me around. At my own family's Thanksgiving. The holiday I'd been attending for 33 years straight, until apparently right now. Sure, Mom. Whatever makes everyone comfortable. I kept my voice flat, emotionless. Didn't give her the fight or the guilt trip or the emotional response she was probably bracing for. Just agreement, compliance, the path of least resistance. Oh, honey, thank you for understanding. I knew you'd be mature about this. Maybe we can do something. Just the two of us. Another weekend? We could meet halfway, get lunch somewhere nice? Yeah, maybe. I was already pulling up the calendar, looking at the open Thanksgiving week. Might actually be a good time to fly out to the West Coast offices, check on the expansion project that had been running behind schedule. I ended the call before she could offer more justifications or explanations that would just make it worse. She'd said her piece, I'd agreed. Conversation over. Sat there for a minute staring at my office wall. Photos from company events, framed articles about industry achievements, my MBA diploma from Columbia. None of it from my family because they'd never really understood what any of it meant. To them, I just worked in business somewhere in New York, doing something with computers and spreadsheets. My younger sister Lily had always been the family favorite. Where I was ambitious and focused, she was warm and spontaneous. Where I built a career, she built a home. Our parents never quite knew what to make of me. Their son, who chose boardrooms over backyard barbecues, who moved to New York at 22 and never looked back, who called every Sunday but rarely visited because there was always another project, another deadline, another reason to stay in the city. Lily was different. She'd stayed in Pennsylvania, close to mom and dad. Married her high school sweetheart at 21 in this big church wedding where I was technically the best man, but basically just showed up, gave a toast, and flew back to New York the next morning because I had a presentation Monday. Divorced that same guy at 28 after he cheated with a coworker from his construction job. Mom had been devastated by the divorce. Called me crying about how Lily's life was falling apart, how the kids were confused, how she didn't know how to help. I'd sent money, enough to cover Lily's rent for 3 months while she got back on her feet. Never got a thank you for that, just an assumption that of course I'd help because I had the money, and what else was I going to do with it? After the divorce, Lily spent the next several years dating guys who were, in Dad's diplomatic words, works in progress. The unemployed musician who lived in her basement for 8 months. The personal trainer who borrowed her car and totaled it. The guy who sold essential oils and tried to recruit the entire family into his pyramid scheme at Christmas dinner. Kyle was her latest attempt at happiness. A regional sales manager she'd met at some conference in Atlanta 6 months ago. They'd been dating for about 2 months before he proposed. Quick even by Lily's standards. Got married 4 months ago at a courthouse ceremony that I wasn't invited to because it was just immediate family and super small, even though I found out later that Kyle's entire extended family had been there. The kids, Lily's daughter Chloe and son Jordan from her first marriage, were 8 and 6. Sweet kids from what I could tell during the 15 minutes I'd spent with them at Dad's birthday party last summer. Kyle had apparently won them over completely, playing stepdad like he'd invented the role. Here's what none of them knew, though. What I deliberately kept from family conversations and Facebook updates and Mom's endless questions about my job was the exact nature of my work. To them, I had some corporate job in New York. Mom told her friends I worked in business development, which was technically accurate the way saying someone works with animals could describe both a zookeeper and a veterinary surgeon. When they asked what I did, I gave vague answers about supply chain management and operations oversight. Enough detail to sound like a real answer, without actually explaining anything. They'd nod and change the subject, and I'd let them. Easier that way. Didn't have to deal with the weird mix of pride and resentment that came when they realized exactly how successful I'd become. I was the chief operating officer of Kingston Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest drug distribution companies on the East Coast. We moved everything from cancer treatments to antibiotics to psychiatric medications across 17 states. Revenue last year was $2.8 billion with a B. We employed over 4,000 people. My division alone had an operating budget that would make most CEOs sweat. I'd been overseeing the acquisition of smaller regional distributors for the past 6 months, consolidating our market position and eliminating redundancies. Kyle worked for Medcore Solutions, a mid-sized distributor based in Pennsylvania. I knew this because I'd reviewed the preliminary acquisition documents 3 weeks earlier. His name had appeared on their organizational chart, Regional Sales Manager, Northeast Territory. Within 48 hours, his company would receive our official acquisition offer. In 6 weeks, if everything went according to plan, Kyle would be working for me. But I hadn't connected the dots until Mom's phone call. Kyle had taken my sister's maiden name on all his social media. Lily's post tagged him as just Kyle with no last name visible unless you dug deep into his profile. His last name was Patterson. I'd simply never put the pieces together because work and family existed in completely separate universes for me. The irony was perfect. The guy who thought I'd ruin the vibe of Thanksgiving dinner was about to have his entire career placed in my hands. I spent that evening reviewing everything we had on Medcore Solutions. Kyle Patterson had been with the company for 6 years, working his way up from a basic sales position. His performance reviews were adequate. Nothing spectacular, but nothing concerning either. He managed a team of 8 people and had hit his targets 3 out of the last 4 quarters. He was, in every measurable way, perfectly average. The acquisition meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning at our Manhattan office. Medcore's CEO would be attending along with their CFO and several department heads. Standard procedure meant that regional managers wouldn't typically be present for initial acquisition discussions, but their CEO had specifically requested that key sales leaders attend to answer any operational questions. Kyle would be there, in my conference room, sitting across from me. I called my executive assistant at 7 the next morning. Vanessa, for tomorrow's Medcore meeting, I want name placards at each seat. Make them prominent, and send me the complete attendance list by noon. Of course. Any particular reason for the placards? We don't usually use them for acquisition meetings. I want everyone to know exactly who they're dealing with. Thursday morning arrived with that crisp November weather that makes New York feel alive. I dressed carefully. Navy suit from a place in Milan that charges what most people pay for a used car, shoes that added 2 inches to my 5'11" frame, and the Tag Heuer watch Dad had given me when I made VP 5 years ago. He'd looked uncomfortable giving it to me, as if success and a son required a different kind of celebration than he was prepared for. The Medcore team arrived at 9:30 for our 10 o'clock meeting. I watched them on the security feed as they checked in at the lobby, noting the way Kyle adjusted his tie repeatedly and whispered something to a colleague. They looked nervous. Good. Vanessa escorted them to the 14th floor conference room, offering refreshments while they waited. I gave them 10 minutes to settle in before making my entrance, watching them on the monitor as they fidgeted with their folders and made small talk. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Fifth Avenue. Our company logo dominated one wall in brushed steel letters 3 feet tall. The table was solid walnut, surrounded by 16 leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything about the space was designed to project power and permanence. When we do acquisitions, we do them right. Make the other company understand from the first handshake exactly what league they're playing in now. I entered with my acquisitions team. Robert Walsh, our CFO, Patricia Hammond, head of operations, and James Brennan, chief legal counsel. We moved as a unit, carrying tablets and folders, projecting the absolute confidence of people who held every advantage. Kyle saw me immediately. I watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, and then complete horror. His mouth literally fell open. The folder in his hand slipped, and papers scattered across the polished table. One of his colleagues had to help him pick them up, while he just sat there looking like he'd seen a ghost. Good morning, everyone. I took my seat at the head of the table, directly opposite Medcore's CEO. Thank you for making the trip from Pennsylvania. I'm sure you're all eager to discuss how Kingston Pharmaceuticals can provide a path forward for Medcore solutions. Helen Crawford, their CEO, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 60s, smiled professionally. We're very interested in hearing your proposal. I brought some of our key personnel to provide insight into our operations. She gestured around the table, introducing people. When she got to Kyle, I watched him try to straighten up, try to look professional despite the fact that his face had gone pale. And this is Kyle Patterson, who oversees our Northeast Territory. Mr. Patterson? I met his eyes directly, letting him see that I knew exactly who he was. I reviewed your performance data. Solid numbers in quarter 2 and quarter 3. The Northeast Territory has been one of your company's more consistent performers. He opened his mouth, closed it, managed a strangled thank you that came out barely above a whisper. Robert launched into our presentation. Market analysis, operational synergies, projected cost savings. I let him handle the financial details while I watched Kyle squirm in his seat. Every few minutes, I'd ask a pointed question about regional operations, directing it to Kyle specifically. Mr. Patterson, walk me through your typical client acquisition process in the Philadelphia market. He stumbled through an answer, his usual sales confidence completely shattered. I could see him trying to figure out if I was going to destroy him right here in front of his boss, or if I was playing some longer game. The truth was, I hadn't decided yet. Halfway through the presentation, Helen asked the question I'd been waiting for. What kind of management changes are you anticipating post-acquisition? I leaned back in my chair, making a show of considering the question carefully. We believe in evaluating talent on merit. Performance speaks for itself. Strong managers who've proven themselves will have opportunities to advance within the larger organization. I looked directly at Kyle. Those who can't adapt to higher standards will need to find positions better suited to their capabilities. His face went from pale to green. Pretty sure he was trying not to throw up right there on our expensive conference table. The meeting wrapped up around noon. Helen seemed satisfied with the terms, and her team looked cautiously optimistic. Kyle looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. As they were gathering their things to leave, I caught Kyle's arm. "Mr. Patterson, could I have a word? Just briefly." His colleagues filed out, leaving us alone in the conference room. He stood there like a kid called to the principal's office, hands clenched at his sides. I let the silence build for a moment, then smiled. Not a warm smile, the kind of smile that makes people nervous. "So Kyle, about Thanksgiving." He actually flinched, started stammering something about family dynamics and comfort levels, and how it was all just a misunderstanding. I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Here's what's going to happen. This acquisition will close in approximately 6 weeks. At that point, MedCore Solutions becomes a wholly owned subsidiary of Kingston Pharmaceuticals. Your CEO will retire with a generous package. Most of her senior team will be absorbed into our organizational structure." I paused, watching him sweat. "Regional managers like yourself will report directly to our Vice President of Sales Operations. That's currently Tom Bradley, but he's retiring in 3 months. I'll be personally selecting his replacement." Kyle's eyes were wide, his breathing shallow. He knew exactly what I was telling him. His entire career was now in my hands. "I want you to understand something clearly. I don't mix business with personal feelings. If you're good at your job, you'll have opportunities here. If you're not, you won't." I stood up, gathering my materials. "The question is, are you good at your job, Kyle? Or have you just been coasting in a smaller pond where nobody pushed you very hard?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You've got 6 weeks to figure out the answer. I suggest you make them count." I walked out, leaving him standing there in that conference room, probably having the worst day of his professional life. That evening, I got a call from Mom. Kyle had told Lily everything, and Lily had called Mom in a panic. Now Mom was calling me, her voice tight with worry. "Honey, Lily says that Kyle works for a company you're buying. Is that true?" "It is." "And you're his boss now?" "I will be, yes." Silence for a moment. Then, "Are you going to fire him?" I considered my answer carefully. "I'm going to evaluate him the same way I evaluate everyone. If he's good at his job, he'll do fine. If he's not, he won't." "But surely you wouldn't— I mean, he's family now." "Mom, you called me 3 days ago to tell me I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving because Kyle thought I'd ruin the vibe. Remember that? Now you want me to give him special treatment because he's family?" She didn't have an answer for that. "I'm not going to sabotage him," I said, "but I'm not going to protect him either. He'll succeed or fail based on his own merit. That's how business works." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, and realized something. For the first time in years, I had my family's complete attention. Not because I'd won some award or hit some milestone, but because I'd suddenly become directly relevant to their lives, in a way they couldn't ignore. The next 6 weeks were interesting. Educational even. Kyle apparently went into overdrive at work. Helen mentioned in one of our transition calls that his numbers had suddenly spiked. He was working weekends, taking on extra clients, doing everything possible to prove his value. Started showing up at 7 a.m. when he'd normally rolled in at 9. Stayed until 6 or 7 when he used to leave at 4:30 sharp. "I don't know what lit a fire under Patterson," she said during one of our Wednesday status calls, "but whatever it is, I wish I'd found it 3 years ago. His October numbers are up 28%. November's trending even higher." I just smiled and made a note in his file. Interesting how motivation works. Fear of losing everything tends to sharpen people's focus real quick. What Helen didn't know was that I'd set up monitoring on Kyle's performance data. Nothing invasive or inappropriate, just regular reports that our integration team was pulling anyway for all MedCore employees. But I was paying special attention to his metrics: call volume, client acquisition, retention rates, revenue per account. Every number that mattered, I was watching. Week 1 after our meeting, Kyle's numbers jumped 15% above his quarterly average. He'd apparently canceled a weekend trip to take emergency client meetings. Lily had posted something passive-aggressive on Facebook about husbands who prioritize work over family that got deleted an hour later. Week 2, 22% above average. He'd closed 2 new accounts that had been pending for months. His team leader sent an email to Helen praising his renewed focus and exceptional performance. I forwarded it to our HR integration team with a note: "Monitor this trajectory. Interesting case study." Week 3, sustained at 20% above baseline. The spike wasn't just adrenaline anymore, he was maintaining it. That was actually impressive. Most people can push hard for a week or 2, but sustaining elevated performance requires actual behavior change. Either Kyle was more capable than his previous numbers suggested, or he was about to burn out spectacularly. Week 4, Thanksgiving week. Numbers dipped slightly, normal for the holiday. I spent Thursday working from my apartment, reviewing West Coast expansion proposals, while the rest of America ate turkey and pretended to like their relatives. Ordered Chinese takeout around 2 p.m. and had a video call with our Seattle team at 4. Productivity was outstanding without the normal family obligation interruptions. Friday after Thanksgiving, I got a text from Lily. First direct contact since the whole thing started. Kyle told me what happened at his meeting. Why didn't you tell us you were his boss? I typed back, you didn't ask. And technically, I'm not his boss yet. Acquisition closes in 2 weeks. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, appeared. Then, are you going to fire him? That depends entirely on Kyle. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. This is business, not family drama. Everything's family drama when it involves family. I didn't respond. She could interpret the silence however she wanted. Week 5. Kyle's numbers jumped again. 28% above his historical average. He'd landed a major account that Medcore had been pursuing for 6 months. A hospital network, looking to consolidate their pharmaceutical supply chain. Helen sent me a personal email about it. Genuinely thrilled, talking about how Patterson had really stepped up during the transition. I pulled the account details. The hospital network deal was legitimately impressive. Kyle had apparently spent 3 weeks courting their procurement director, creating custom proposals, demonstrating value in ways that went beyond the basic sales pitch. This wasn't just fear-motivated hustle, this was actual skill development. Made another note in his file. Capable of high performance when properly motivated. Previous environment may have enabled complacency. Continue monitoring post-acquisition. Week 6. December. The acquisition closed on schedule. Papers signed, money transferred, Medcore Solutions officially became a wholly owned subsidiary of Kingston Pharmaceuticals. Helen got her retirement package and booked a January flight to Naples, Florida. The executive team was absorbed into our structure, and Kyle Patterson officially became an employee of my company. His first day under Kingston's banner, I had Vanessa send him a calendar invite for a one-on-one meeting. 2 days out, scheduled for 30 minutes. The email subject line, Q4 performance review and future objectives. I could only imagine how he felt seeing that in his inbox. Meanwhile, the family drama was escalating behind the scenes. Mom started calling more frequently, not about the holidays or family stuff, but about Kyle and Lily. How stressed Kyle was, how much pressure he was under, how Lily was worried about their financial future, all carefully worded to make me feel guilty without directly asking me to do anything. He's working so hard, Mom said during one call. Coming home exhausted every night. Lily says he barely sees the kids anymore because he's always at the office or taking client calls. Sounds like he's taking his job seriously, but it's affecting their marriage. Lily's concerned. She says he's not himself anymore. Mom, he's adjusting to a major corporate transition. That's normal. Most employees experience stress during acquisitions. But you could make it easier on him. You're in charge now, aren't you? I'm the COO, which means I hold everyone to the same standards. Even your brother-in-law? Especially my brother-in-law. Anything else would be unethical. She didn't like that answer. Kept pushing, kept trying different angles. The kids missed spending time with Kyle. Lily was worried they were going to lose the house if Kyle lost his job. Dad was concerned about the family staying together through this difficult time. I listened to all of it without committing to anything. Just let her talk herself out, made non-committal noises, and went back to work. Dad tried a different approach. Called me up one night and started talking about family loyalty, about how successful people have a responsibility to help their relatives, about how I shouldn't let pride get in the way of doing the right thing. Real philosophical stuff that basically boiled down to give Kyle special treatment because he married your sister. I let him talk himself out before responding. Dad, you're asking me to compromise my professional standards to protect someone who literally had me uninvited from Thanksgiving dinner. Do you see the problem with that? He spluttered for a bit about how that was different, how I was being petty, how a bigger man would let it go. You're right, I said. A bigger man would let it go, but I'm not feeling particularly big right now. I'm feeling exactly the size of someone who isn't welcome at his own family's Thanksgiving. That shut him up for a minute. Then he tried the angle about how I was hurting Lily by putting pressure on Kyle. Dad, I'm not putting pressure on Kyle. Kyle's job is putting pressure on Kyle. That's what jobs do. Welcome to the real world where performance actually matters. The conversation ended shortly after that. Dad was upset. I didn't care. Went back to reviewing Kyle's account pipeline for Q1. Lily called the next day. Tried the direct approach. Tears, guilt, the whole package. Kyle was crumbling under the stress. The kids could sense something was wrong. Their marriage was suffering. Couldn't I just let her know if he was going to be okay? Lily, I'm not discussing employee performance with family members. That would be completely inappropriate and probably illegal. But he's your brother-in-law. Right now, he's a regional sales manager at a company I'm integrating. That's the only relationship that matters in this context. When did you become so cold? That question hit different than she probably intended. When did I become cold? Maybe around the time my family decided I wasn't important enough to include in their holiday plans. Maybe when they prioritized a relative stranger's comfort over their own son's feelings. Maybe when they spent 33 years treating my ambition like it was a character flaw that needed to be tolerated rather than celebrated. I'm not cold, Lily. I'm professional. There's a difference. She hung up on me. I went back to work. The one-on-one meeting with Kyle arrived on schedule. 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. He showed up 10 minutes early, looking like he'd gotten maybe 4 hours of sleep. His suit was perfectly pressed, shoes shined, tie straight. Trying so hard to look professional and put together, while clearly falling apart internally. Vanessa showed him to my office, not the conference room, my personal office. Wanted him to see the space, the views, the photos of company events and industry awards. Wanted him to understand exactly who he was dealing with and what I'd built. Meanwhile, the family drama was escalating. Lily called me twice, both times to plead Kyle's case. He was trying so hard. He was under so much stress. Couldn't I just let her know if he was going to be okay? Lily, I'm not discussing employee performance with family members. That would be completely inappropriate. But he's your brother-in-law. Right now, he's a regional sales manager at a company I'm acquiring. That's the only relationship that matters in this context. Dad tried a different approach. Called me up and started talking about family loyalty, about how successful people have a responsibility to help their relatives, about how I shouldn't let pride get in the way of doing the right thing. I let him talk himself out before responding. Dad, you're asking me to compromise my professional standards to protect someone who literally had me uninvited from Thanksgiving dinner. Do you see the problem with that? He spluttered for a bit about how that was different, how I was being petty, how a bigger man would let it go. You're right, I said. A bigger man would let it go. But I'm not feeling particularly big right now. I'm feeling exactly the size of someone who isn't welcome at his own family's Thanksgiving. The acquisition closed the week before Christmas. Kyle survived the initial restructuring. His recent performance surge had actually impressed the transition team, but he was now reporting to our VP of Sales Operations, which meant his work product crossed my desk regularly. Every report, every quarterly review, every performance metric, I saw all of it. And he knew I saw it. Christmas rolled around, and suddenly I was getting calls about holiday plans. Mom wanted to know if I was coming home. Lily wondered if we could all get together. Even Dad sent a text about family time being important. I waited until Christmas Eve to respond to any of them. Then I sent a group text. I'll be spending Christmas in New York this year. I think the atmosphere will be more comfortable for everyone that way. Enjoy your holiday. Mom called within 5 minutes, practically in tears. That wasn't what they meant. They wanted me there. Kyle felt terrible about the whole Thanksgiving thing. Couldn't we just move past it? Sure, Mom. I'll move past it the same way you moved past uninviting me from Thanksgiving. We'll just pretend it never happened and everything's fine. That's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. But it is equivalent. I spent Christmas Day working on a merger proposal and eating Chinese takeout while watching the city from my apartment. It was actually pretty peaceful. No forced small talk, no passive-aggressive comments about my career choices, no feeling like I had to justify my life to people who'd never really understood it anyway. The day after Christmas, Kyle requested a meeting with me. Vanessa scheduled him for the following Tuesday. No special treatment, no urgent accommodation. He could wait like everyone else. When he showed up at my office, he looked like he'd aged 5 years and 2 months. The cocky sales guy swagger was completely gone. He sat down across from my desk and didn't even try to make small talk. I owe you an apology, he said. Not as an employee to a boss, but as a person to a person. I leaned back in my chair and waited. When Lily told me about her brother in New York with the corporate job, I made a lot of assumptions. I thought you'd be arrogant. I thought you'd look down on us. I thought having you around would make me feel small. He looked down at his hands. But the truth is, I already felt small. Ready. I felt like I hadn't accomplished enough. I felt like I was barely holding on to the success I had. And instead of dealing with that, I decided to exclude you from your own family. Go on, I said. I convinced Lily that it would be easier if you weren't there. I made it about the kids and the dynamics and the atmosphere. But really, it was about me being intimidated by you before I even met you properly. He looked up, met my eyes. You could have destroyed my career. You could have fired me on day one of the acquisition, and nobody would have questioned it. But you didn't. You just held me to a standard and watched to see if I'd meet it. And have you? I asked. Met the standard? I think I'm getting there. My numbers are up 30%. My team's retention is the best in our division. I'm doing the work I should have been doing all along. I nodded slowly. You're right. You are getting there. Your Q4 report was solid. The Northeast Territory is actually outperforming expectations. Relief flooded his face. So I'm going to be okay? Job-wise? Kyle, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. I never wanted to fire you. I wanted to see what you were capable of when you actually tried. I pulled up his performance file on my computer, turned the screen so he could see it. These are your numbers from the past 6 weeks. This is what you can do when you're motivated. Why weren't you doing this before? He thought about it. Because I didn't have to. My old company had low standards. As long as I hit minimum targets, nobody pushed me. Exactly. You're not a bad employee, Kyle. You're just someone who's been allowed to coast for too long. This company doesn't let people coast. Either you grow or you go. I want to grow, he said. I want to prove I deserve to be here. Then keep doing what you've been doing. And Kyle, stop thinking about me as your brother-in-law who might fire you. Think of me as the COO who's watching to see if you're promotion material. Those are very different relationships. His eyes widened. Promotion material. Tom Bradley is retiring in March. We'll be looking for a new VP of sales operations. Internal candidates will be given priority. You've got 3 months to make your case. He left my office looking like a completely different person than the guy who'd walked in. Focused, determined, maybe even a little bit hopeful. That night, I got a call from Lily. She was crying, happy tears this time. Kyle told me what you said about the promotion opportunity, about giving him a chance to prove himself. I meant it, I said. He's good at his job when he actually applies himself. I can work with that. We were all so wrong about you, she said. I was wrong about you. I let Kyle's insecurity become my insecurity. I chose his comfort over my own brother. Yeah, you did. I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. Not because Kyle works for you now, but because I should have stood up for you regardless. You're my brother. You should have been at Thanksgiving. It was the first real apology I'd gotten from anyone. No justifications, no excuses, just acknowledgement of what had happened, and genuine remorse. Thanks for saying that, I said. It means something. Are you free this weekend? I want to come to New York. Just me. Without Kyle. I want to see your life. Actually see it. Not just hear about it secondhand. We spent that Saturday walking around Manhattan. I showed her my office building, took her to my favorite places, let her see the life I'd built. She asked questions. Real questions. About my work, my goals, my day-to-day reality. I had no idea, she said, as we sat in a coffee shop in the village. I mean, I knew you were successful, but I didn't understand what that actually looked like. The responsibility, the pressure, the impact. Nobody in the family really did, I said. And I guess I never really tried to explain it. Seemed easier to just let you all think I had some generic corporate job. That's partly our fault. We never really asked. We just made assumptions and left it at that. Over the next few months, things shifted. Kyle did get promoted to VP of Sales Operations. He earned it with consistently strong performance and genuine leadership development. Lily and I started talking every week, real conversations about our lives and challenges and hopes. Mom and Dad came to visit New York in March. I gave them the full tour: office, apartment, favorite spots. Dad seemed genuinely impressed, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Mom kept taking pictures and texting them to relatives with captions about my son, the COO. That summer, the Wall Street Journal ran a profile piece about rising executives in pharmaceutical distribution. My interview took up 2 full pages, including a photo of me in my office with the Manhattan skyline behind me. Dad called the day it published. I'm framing this, he said, and I'm sorry I never asked you to explain what you really do. I think I was intimidated by it. Easier to just think of it as some corporate job than to acknowledge that my son had completely surpassed anything I'd ever accomplished. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I was threatened by your success instead of proud of it. That's on me. But I'm proud now. Really proud. Mom planned a party in April at a restaurant she'd researched for weeks. Extended family came. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. She'd created a slideshow of my career milestones that made me genuinely emotional. Lily stood up toward the end of the evening and said something that stuck with me. Growing up, I never understood why he was so driven, why he studied while I played, Why he worked while I socialized? I thought he was missing out on life. She looked at me across the crowded room. But he wasn't missing out. He was building something. He was becoming someone. And instead of celebrating that, our family spent years making him feel like he had to choose between success and belonging. She paused. He deserves both. He's always deserved both. The next Thanksgiving, just as I'd promised myself, everyone came to New York. I rented out a private room at this restaurant Mom had mentioned loving on their visit. We ate too much, laughed until our sides hurt, and built new memories that had room for everyone. Kyle still calls me Mr. Hartwell at company functions, which makes Lily roll her eyes every time. But he does it with respect now, not fear. His team consistently ranks as one of the top performing divisions in the company. I still work 12-hour days. I still love my career with a passion that some people don't understand. But now, when I go home for holidays, I'm not shrinking myself to fit through the door. I'm walking in as exactly who I am. The COO, the brother, the uncle, the son, all of it without apology. And nobody suggests I'd ruin the vibe anymore. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.